Chosen ones, God smiled in joy, because you finally did this. In the quiet corners of a city much like any other, there lived a man named Elias. He was not remarkable in the eyes of the world. No fame, no fortune, no grand titles. He worked long shifts at a small warehouse on the edge of town, lifting boxes that seemed heavier each year, coming home to a modest apartment where the walls held the echoes of dreams he had once whispered to himself in his youth. Elias had always felt different, though. From childhood, a quiet voice inside him spoke of purpose, of a path laid out before him that he could sense but never quite see. People called it intuition. His mother called it God's whisper. But life had a way of drowning out whispers. Responsibilities piled up like unpaid bills, relationships fractured, failures accumulated. And over time, Elias learned to ignore the voice, convincing himself it was nothing more than childish fantasy. Yet the voice never truly left. It waited patiently, like a parent watching a stubborn child learn to walk. Years passed. Elias turned 40, then 45. The mirror showed lines of weariness, eyes that had seen too much disappointment. One evening, after another argument with his estranged sister over the phone, words sharp as broken glass, he sat alone on his worn couch, staring at the ceiling. The room felt smaller than ever. For the first time in decades, he spoke aloud to the silence. "Why me?" he asked. "If I'm supposed to be chosen for something, why does it feel like I'm chosen to suffer? Why do I keep failing?" No answer came in thunder or lightning, only the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. But something shifted inside him that night. Not dramatically, not with fireworks or visions, just a small, stubborn decision. He would stop running from the voice. He would listen, even if it terrified him. The next morning, Elias woke earlier than usual. Instead of scrolling through his phone or rushing to work, he sat still for 10 minutes. He prayed, not the polished prayers of childhood, but raw, honest ones. "If there's something you want from me, show me. I'm tired of pretending I don't hear you." That day at work, a young coworker named Maya approached him during break. She was new, barely 20, eyes full of the kind of hope Elias had long forgotten. She confided that she was struggling, overwhelmed by debt, family pressure, and a sense that she was invisible. "I don't know why I'm telling you this," she said, embarrassed. "You just seem kind." Elias could have brushed it off with a polite nod and returned to his boxes. That's what the old version of him would have done. Instead, something stirred. He listened, really listened. Then he shared a piece of his own story, not the polished parts, but the broken ones. The nights he cried himself to sleep, the times he almost gave up, and how, somehow, he kept going. Maya's eyes widened. "You make it sound like there's still hope," she whispered. "There is," Elias replied, surprised at the certainty in his own voice, "even when it doesn't feel like it." That conversation lasted only 15 minutes. No one else noticed, no applause, no recognition. But in the unseen realm, something monumental occurred. In the courts of heaven, where time bends differently and hearts are weighed by their intentions rather than their achievements, a great light gathered. Angels paused in their duties. The Father turned his gaze toward a small warehouse on the edge of a forgotten city, and God smiled. Not a polite, distant smile, a full, radiant, joy-filled smile, the kind a father gives when his child finally takes those first trembling steps after years of crawling in fear. Heaven rejoiced not because Elias had preached to thousands or performed miracles visible to the world. Heaven rejoiced because Elias had finally obeyed the smallest, quietest prompting, to love someone in the moment they needed it most. He had said yes, not to a grand destiny, not to fame or power, to a single act of kindness born from surrender. That yes was the breakthrough the enemy never saw coming. For years, darkness had whispered lies. "You're too broken, too late, too ordinary." It had kept Elias paralyzed, convincing him his life held no real value. But in that ordinary moment, in an ordinary place, with an ordinary conversation, Elias chose faith over fear, obedience over excuses, love over indifference. And God laughed in delight, a warm, booming sound that echoed through eternity. "Look," the Father said to the hosts of heaven, "my child has finally trusted me enough to move. He has laid down his pride, his doubts, his need for control. He has done what I asked, not because it was easy, but because he finally believed I am good." From that day forward, things began to change for Elias. Not overnight, not in dramatic ways the world would notice, but steadily, like dawn creeping over the horizon. Maya found strength and started turning her life around, crediting that one conversation. Other coworkers began opening up to him. Doors he never knew existed slowly opened. Opportunities appeared. Healing came to old wounds. But the greatest gift was not the changes around him. It was the peace inside, the deep knowing that he was seen, chosen, and loved, not for what he could do, but for who he was becoming. Elias never became famous. His name never appeared in headlines. Yet in the quiet moments when he prayed, he sometimes felt that same smile from above, a father's joy, a reminder that the smallest act of surrender can move mountains in the spiritual realm. And somewhere in the unseen, the story continued, because every time a chosen one finally says yes, heaven celebrates. God smiles in joy, not because the journey is finished, but because it has truly begun. You reading this right now, perhaps you are the chosen one in your own quiet story. Maybe today, in some small, unseen way, you finally did it. You let go. You obeyed. You chose love over fear. If so, know this: heaven noticed, the Father smiled, and joy unspeakable is rippling through eternity because of you. In the sprawling, smog-choked metropolis of Eldridge City, where skyscrapers pierced the heavens like indifferent sentinels and the streets pulsed with the hurried footsteps of the forgotten, there lived a man named Elias Thorne. He was 47, an age where dreams often curdled into regrets, and his life had settled into a monotonous rhythm that felt more like a cage than a routine. By day, he toiled in the dimly lit bowels of a sprawling warehouse on the industrial outskirts, where the air was thick with the scent of cardboard and machine oil. His hands, calloused and scarred from years of lifting crates heavier than his burdens, moved with mechanical precision. By night, he returned to a cramped one-bedroom apartment in a run-down building where the walls were thin enough to hear neighbors' arguments and the laughter of children he never had. Elias hadn't always been this way. As a boy growing up in a small rural town far from the city's clamor, he had been full of wonder. His mother, a devout woman with eyes that sparkled like polished amethysts when she spoke of faith, had often told him stories from the Bible, tales of ordinary men called to extraordinary purposes. "God chooses the unlikely ones, Elias," she'd say, tucking him into bed under a quilt sewn from scraps of old dresses. "The shepherds, the fishermen, the tax collectors. He whispers to them, and when they listen, worlds change." Elias would lie awake staring at the cracks in the ceiling, feeling that whisper in his soul, a gentle tug like an invisible thread pulling him towards something vast and unknowable. But life, with its sharp edges and unexpected turns, had a way of fraying that thread. His father left when Elias was 10, abandoning the family for the lure of distant cities and fleeting pleasures. The loss hardened Elias, turning his wonder into wariness. His mother worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, her faith unwavering even as her health faded. When she passed away from cancer just after Elias turned 18, the whisper grew faint. He moved to Eldridge City chasing vague promises of opportunity, but found only dead-end jobs and hollow relationships. A brief marriage in his 20s ended in divorce, leaving scars deeper than any physical wound. His sister, Lena, who had stayed in their hometown, drifted away amid bitter arguments over inherited debts and unspoken resentments. Elias learned to drown the whisper in the noise of daily survival, television static, cheap beer, and the endless scroll of social media feeds that promised connection but delivered isolation. Yet the whisper persisted, stubborn as a heartbeat. It came in dreams of vast landscapes where light broke through storm clouds, or in fleeting moments of beauty, a child's laughter in the park, a stranger's unexpected kindness. Elias dismissed them as nostalgia or fatigue. Chosen? He'd scoff inwardly. Chosen for what? To fade away unnoticed? He had convinced himself that if God existed, he had long since forgotten him. Or worse, that Elias was simply not worth the bother. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of bruised purple and fading gold, Elias's world cracked open. He had just ended a heated phone call with Lena. She had called to berate him for missing their memorial anniversary, again. "You're just like Dad," she spat, her voice trembling with years of pent-up pain. "Running from everything that matters." The words landed like blows, reopening old wounds. Elias hung up, his chest tight with a mix of anger and shame. He slumped onto his threadbare couch, the springs creaking in protest, and stared at the peeling paint on the ceiling. The apartment felt suffocating, the silence oppressive. For the first time in years, tears welled up unbidden. "Why?" he whispered to the empty room. "If I'm supposed to be one of your chosen ones, why does it feel like a curse? Why do I keep failing everyone, including myself?" The question hung in the air, unanswered. No booming voice from the heavens, no angelic visitation, just the distant wail of a siren and the hum of the refrigerator. But in that vulnerability, something stirred, a memory of his mother's words. "God doesn't shout, Elias. He whispers because he wants you to lean in close." Exhausted and desperate, Elias made a decision that night. It wasn't grand or heroic. It was simple, almost insignificant. He would stop ignoring the whisper. He would listen, even if it meant facing the parts of himself he'd buried deep. Kneeling by his bed for the first time since childhood, he prayed, not with eloquent words, but with raw honesty. "I'm done running," he said, voice breaking. "If there's a purpose, show me. I'm scared, but I'm here." The next morning dawned brighter than usual, the sunlight filtering through grimy windows like a tentative promise. Elias rose early, foregoing his usual routine of coffee and mindless scrolling. Instead, he sat in silence for 20 minutes, breathing deeply, opening himself to whatever might come. Nothing dramatic happened, no visions, no revelations. But as he headed to work, a subtle peace settled over him, like a warm blanket on a cold day. At the warehouse, the day unfolded as any other. Stacks of boxes, the beep of forklifts, the chatter of coworkers. During the lunch break, as Elias sat alone in the break room munching on a sandwich, a young woman approached him hesitantly. Her name was Maya Ruiz, a recent hire with wide, expressive eyes that belied her youth. She was 22, fresh out of community college, and carried the weight of the world on her slender shoulders. "Mind if I sit?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elias nodded, surprised. Most people kept to themselves. Maya sat down, fiddling with her water bottle. After a moment, she blurted out, "I don't know why I'm telling you this, but I feel like I'm drowning. Bills piling up, my family's depending on me, and I feel so invisible, like nothing I do matters." In the past, Elias might have offered a curt, "Hang in there," and returned to his meal, but that morning's prayer echoed in his mind. The whisper urged him, "Listen, share." He set down his sandwich and looked at her, really looked. "I get it," he said softly. "I've been there, still am some days. Lost my mom young, marriage fell apart, fought with my sister. Felt like God or fate or whatever picked me to lose." Maya's eyes met his, a spark of recognition igniting. "How do you keep going?" Elias paused, searching for words. "I don't always, but lately I've been trying to listen to this voice inside, telling me I'm not alone, that even in the mess, there's purpose. Maybe it's God, maybe it's just hope, but sharing it helps. You're not invisible, Maya, not to me right now." The conversation stretched beyond the break time, words flowing like a dam breaking. Maya shared her dreams of becoming a teacher, her fears of failure. Elias recounted his mother's faith, the whisper he'd ignored for so long. By the end, tears glistened in her eyes. "Thank you," she said. "No one's ever just listened like that. As they parted, Elias felt a warmth in his chest, a quiet affirmation. He didn't know it then, but in the celestial realms, far beyond the veil of the visible world, a profound shift occurred. In the grand halls of heaven, where eternity unfolds in brilliant light and the songs of angels weave through the fabric of creation, the Father paused, his gaze, infinite and loving, fixed upon that humble break room. Angels gathered, their wings shimmering with anticipation, and God smiled. It was a smile of pure, unadulterated joy, the kind that lights up the cosmos, warmer than 1,000 suns. Heaven erupted in celebration, not with trumpets and fanfare for earthly kings, but with a gentle, resounding laughter that echoed through the ages. "Behold," the Father proclaimed, his voice like rolling thunder wrapped in tenderness. "My son Elias has finally yielded. He has heard my whisper and acted upon it, not in pursuit of glory, but in simple obedience. He has chosen love over self-preservation, vulnerability over armor." The angels rejoiced, for they knew the power of that moment. The adversary, who had long sown seeds of doubt in Elias's heart, whispering lies of worthlessness and isolation, recoiled in defeat. For years, darkness had kept Elias bound, convincing him that his ordinary life held no eternal value. But in that single act of compassion, Elias had broken the chains. He had said yes, not to a throne or a battlefield, but to the quiet call of his Creator. In the days that followed, ripples spread from that conversation like stones skipped across a still pond. Maya returned to work with renewed energy. She confided in Elias that his words had inspired her to enroll in night classes for her teaching certification. "You made me believe it's possible," she said one afternoon. Word spread subtly among the warehouse staff. Others began seeking Elias out, a grizzled veteran named Tom battling addiction, a single mother, Sarah, overwhelmed by childcare woes. Elias didn't preach, he listened, shared his struggles, and offered what encouragement he could. "I'm no expert," he'd say with a humble chuckle, "but I've learned that surrendering to something bigger helps." Meanwhile, Elias's personal life began to mend. Emboldened by his newfound peace, he reached out to Lena. The call was awkward at first, laced with apologies and long silences. "I was wrong. I've been running from the pain, from God, from you." To his surprise, Lena softened. "I've missed you, brother," she replied. They agreed to meet, bridging the chasm that had divided them for years. Opportunities emerged unexpectedly. A supervisor noticed Elias's positive influence on the team and promoted him to a lead position with better pay and hours. He volunteered at a local shelter where his quiet empathy touched lives scarred by hardship. Dreams returned, not of grandeur, but of quiet impact, mentoring youth, writing about his journey, perhaps even speaking at small gatherings. Yet, the true transformation was internal. Elias felt the whisper grow into a steady voice, guiding him through doubts and setbacks. There were still hard days, bills to pay, loneliness that crept in at night, but now he faced them with surrender. "You've chosen me," he'd pray, "and I'm choosing you back." In heaven, the celebration continued. Every small yes from Elias sent waves of joy through the divine courts. God smiled often now, delighting in his child's growth. For the chosen ones are not defined by perfection or power, but by their willingness to finally act on the whisper, to love, to heal, to hope. And you, dear reader, in your own corner of the world, perhaps amidst bustling streets or quiet rooms, may be hearing that same whisper. It calls you chosen, not for what you've done, but for what you can become. Maybe today, in a moment as ordinary as a conversation or a prayer, you finally did it. You leaned in. You said yes.